Hello and welcome to Constellation League, a Warhammer podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Scott.
And I'm Paul.
And today we're joined by someone who's deep in the labyrinth of the Goblin King. Maybe David Bowie will show up in his spandex and have a song for us, an ethereal David Bowie. I don't know that any of us would really love that, but
Yeah.
hey, it could happen. We've got Matt joining us, and with a bit of a different perspective on some 40K stuff that we're looking to talk about. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Matt is a friend of ours, a friend of the show, and a friend of ours from the local Kingston Warhammer community. And you're really a strong hobbyist. I mean, just before we started recording on this, you were sort of giving us a little tour of your board game room there and your labyrinth cupboard and your Star Wars cosplay stuff, and you're well into the hobby side
Hmm.
of all this stuff that we absolutely love.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah,
impressive. Really, really impressive stuff.
Yeah.
I I I'm kind of a I consider myself kind of a middling or sort of mid-tier player.
Mm,
I can play the game. I enjoy playing the game. I like to
mm,
think that I put together, thoughtful, kind of engaging, tough lists,
mm.
but I'm never going to win a GT. I know that.
Right. You're in
So
good
I
company, Matt.
so
Who wants
I
to be on top? What's the
Yeah.
point?
a
I don't think you're
long
supposed
time
to
ago.
win this game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a long time ago, I really started to kind of get really deep into the hobby side of
Mm,
40K. Um, and a lot of that, I I first started 40K back in '94
wow.
were the first models that I purchased.
Awesome.
Wow.
And that was,
What
God, it
were
was like,
what were they?
it was the like 5-piece Chaos Space Marine troop box,
Okay.
ones that had like the little barrel torso and like the static pose legs, and it had like the arm with the shoulder pad already integrated on it. And
Awesome.
it was just mono pose. It was like five dudes
Right.
in a box. All of them were the same. I remember walking, I was on summer vacation at my grandparents' place. And I
Hmm.
remember walking down to this game store, and I was like, you know what? Slap the money on the counter. I was like, these guys, I'm in.
Yeah. It was
That's
just the
And
box
fantastic.
art, eh? It was just the
yeah,
box art caught your eye, and that was.
yeah, I was looking at all the different armies out there, and I was like,
Hmm.
guys in armor with spikes all over them, done.
Yep.
I was like, I am in.
Deal.
I was like
Yeah.
teenage boy. I was like, yeah, spikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And then, so where did like when did the hobbying part really take off for you? Were you always like engaged in the painting and building first, or how did that
I
come
I
about?
I feel like I started off as many like kids do,
Hmm.
where you just throw it together as fast as you can. You don't care what it looks like. You're
Right.
just trying to get models together and put them on a table and start, playing soldiering against other people who are doing the same kind of thing.
Hmm.
Right.
So my first ones, when I look back at them, they were probably begging me to die
Hmm.
when they saw
Yeah.
some of my older models.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of my models still look like that. It's not
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
children that do this.
Yeah, exactly. There are adult men that still can't paint these things, so you know.
So it's in high school,
Yeah.
my mom moved my sisters and I up to she went back to school.
Hmm.
So we moved to Delaware, and
Oh yeah.
there in high school I got a job at this local game store. It was called the Days of Nights,
Hmm.
and it was
Good name.
probably the most magical store I've ever been in my whole life.
Oh
Wow.
wow.
To this day, it's it's kind of like your first,
Hmm.
where you measure everything after that point. Every store that I go into that sells GW or role playing games or tabletop games of any sort
Hmm.
always gets measured back to the Days of Nights.
That's amazing.
Right.
and invariably, unfortunately, all of them suck.
They
Yeah.
all come up short. That's too
Yeah,
bad.
every single one comes up shy. I'm
Right.
not besmirching. There are great stores out there. There are stores that I love,
Hmm.
but the Days of Nights just had this, and I haven't been back there in probably a decade.
Mm.
Um, but
So it's still
it,
around? Like it's
oh yeah,
still
it's still around.
still in business? Good.
Yeah, the owners that it had been around for about, I want to say 7 or 8 years by the time I started working there.
Okay.
Mm.
And then it's continuing to this day. Like it has new owners, obviously. But
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
it was cool. I actually still keep in touch with some of some of the alumni of people that I worked with from Days and
Oh,
Nights. It was
cool.
super
That's
cool.
really
Yeah.
cool.
It was the first store that I had ever been to that had its own gaming club and back. It
Mm.
was interesting. It was separated from the store by a locked door. So you had to go through the back, um, through the stock area. So like employees could go through the stock area and then go through another locked door to get into the gaming area, which had its own bathroom, which was really cool.
That's
Oh, yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Always
And then
handy.
there was a door to the parking lot from the gaming zone.
Right.
And there were tables in there for 40K. And you could lay a tabletop down, throw some terrain on it, and pitch a game, or people play Magic or D&D or just to
Hmm.
all hours of the night
That's
because the
amazing.
gaming space was open after the store was closed.
Right.
Right, because the doors
So
would all be locked and
Yeah.
everything, so it was pretty safe that way.
yeah, so there were certain people that were given keys to the gaming space by one of the owners, and if one of those people was there, then you could game. And
Nice.
during the summer, we prop the door open. There was a screen door that we put on it and get some
Hmm.
air in, and it was
Wow.
great. Like
It's some
I
much needed
remember,
air.
Yeah. Yeah.
I I remember playing there until like 10, 11 o'clock some nights after
Right.
going to school all day and then working at the store after school
Hmm.
and just sticking around afterwards and like throwing a game of 40K or fantasy or playing D&D or just
That
hanging out
sounds
and painting
amazing.
models. Yeah,
So is that where you started playing Warhammer regularly? Was there?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I really started playing 40K regularly.
Hmm.
And my army from the start, from the time that I actually picked up a codex and started organizing forces,
Hmm.
was Thousand Sons. That's
Oh,
been
okay.
that's been my long served like 100% army.
Nice.
What is it
Like
Nice.
about
back
that
in the
army specifically that pulled you in?
it was just the lore, like
Okay.
the fact that you've got this and I mean the lore has been fleshed out a lot since then, but
Hmm.
yeah, the whole sorcerer 40K, like you've got marines that are basically dead and sealed inside their armor that are just being led around by the people that used to know them as actual human beings or
Hmm.
Astartes at that point. So
Right.
yeah, it was, which was interesting because one of my best friends in high school at the time, who also got into 40K right around then,
Hmm.
uh, my friend Tim, he played Space Wolves.
Oh,
Like
very
Okay.
that was his
thematic.
first
Yeah,
army,
yeah.
and he's loved Space Wolves ever since.
Right.
So it was just kind of funny that we were like best friends and just so happened to pick like the most bitter, brutal
Rivals.
enemies of the
Yeah.
40K universe.
Yeah. God.
That's amazing. That's fantastic.
It was awesome.
Well,
And
let's
then
have a civil
another,
game here, boys. Let's have a civil game
Yeah, yeah.
here.
like
Everyone's foaming at the mouth as that game's going on. Oh, that's
uh,
great. And then
Morgan.
when did your when did your hobbying really become your like prime focus?
Uh, so it started at the Days of Nights
Hmm.
because so one of the owners, a man that unfortunately has passed on from this world,
Hmm.
uh, his name was John Corridon, and John was he was one of those people that he had played almost everything.
Hmm.
He owned a game store not because he wanted to make money.
Hmm.
He owned a game store because he was a lifelong gamer.
Right.
He lived and breathed and, you know, ate and slept role playing games and LARPs and tabletop and card games. And he was probably one of the coolest people I've ever met in my whole life. Definitely the coolest boss I've ever had,
Hmm.
ever.
That's amazing.
And he would paint miniatures. He didn't play any games that had miniatures in them, to my
Hmm.
knowledge, besides D&D. But he would paint them, and he enjoyed seeing other people's painted stuff.
Oh, cool.
So I'd be sitting there and I'd be working away, going crazy in my basement at home.
Hmm.
And then I'd bring something in and I'd be like, "Hey, John, what do you think?" Because I knew that he
Hmm.
wouldn't sugarcoat it for me. He'd give me a really honest feedback about what
Okay.
he saw.
That's great.
And there was something that he said to me once, and I haven't ever forgot it. It was when Inquisitor had come out, and I got really hard into Inquisitor for a while.
Okay.
Um, did you guys ever play it or see it or?
No.
So
No, I don't think
Inquisitor
so.
was kind of like it was kind of like Kill Teams, only the miniatures were about 4 inches tall.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah, it had its own special book, and you basically made up. It was kind of like D&D and 40K mixed together,
Okay.
where
Okay.
you could play a game with one model on
Hmm.
either side,
Oh,
and it was you could have like a Space Marine or a Rogue Trader or an Inquisitor or Demon Host or they had all kinds of different miniatures and characters that you could make
Hmm.
and then arm them with different things and give them backstories and attributes and different pieces and whatnot. And it was really thematic. It was kind of GW's first sort of foray into the more like the less old grognard kind of 40K fantasy
right.
like tabletop experience and more into the thematic side.
Right.
Unfortunately, it didn't catch on because the terrain for a model that's this big had to be
Yeah.
exponentially larger, and
Yeah.
making it look thematic just didn't often work out well.
No.
It was like because we played with regular 40K terrain,
Yeah.
so it looked like a grown up on like a play school
Yeah.
playground.
Yeah.
So there were problems, and then Inquisitor 28 took off for a little while. Anyways, I'm getting off now. So I had painted up this really cool Arcoflagellant
Hmm.
model. I don't have it anymore, but the model that they had these really cool like the whip arm
Right.
pieces
Hmm.
on it. And I remember I took the base and I made the base longer, so it was kind of an oval. And then I made a chair for him
Hmm.
because he was all leaned over, kind of hunching in this sort of loping stride.
Hmm.
And he had the cool pacifier helm on him, and the drugs that went into his back, they were all little separate needles that you had to glue in there and
Oh,
sculpt
cool.
around and stuff.
Nice.
So I got them all put together, and one of his arms was behind his back, and the other one was kind of forward. The one that was behind him, I snipped off, and I put an orc power claw on that I sanded a bunch of pieces off, and then put some aquilas and did some conversion work to make it look like a proper kind of ridiculously pinchy arcoflagellant hand.
Right
Hmm.
on.
Uh, and off of his helmet, I had these actual wires trailing back to this big like monitor that I had stuck to the side of the chair with some other pieces and cabling and tubes and capacitors and stuff. So it looked like his little pacifier chair that they had him sitting in when he was deactivated, that he
Nice.
was springing up out of. And the wire that was coming out of the back of his head, he had like I ran it so that the claw it looked like he was about to pinch the cables
Hmm.
and cut them as he was running away from the chair. Kind
Right.
of. So I was all excited. I brought it and I showed John, and he looked at it and he was quiet for about like 5 minutes,
Hmm.
and then
The
and
tension,
this
the kid,
yeah
the here, sir, what do you think?
yeah, it's one of those this could go one of two
Yeah,
ways
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
pieces. And he he gave it back to me, and he's like, now, Matt, he's like, looking at this, I can see that you're an amazing technical painter. He's like, getting in all the little places and doing all the stuff. He's like, that's great. He's like, but the problem that I have with it is it doesn't have a soul.
Okay.
He's like, so, and then I thought about that, and I thought about it a long time. And since then, it's really stuck with me that whenever I paint something, I try to give every miniature that I paint its own soul.
Mm.
So when I'm putting it together, I try to figure out, not what's its purpose, what's its guiding force,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's being cognizant of everything that I do when I put an army together
Right.
from conception to completion.
Hmm.
Um, I think about all of the different pieces, like how is it going to integrate into the display board?
Hmm.
Because
Right.
most of the armies that I put together are for the Nexus Club champs. I typically run on a 1 year cycle where I will say, okay, champs has just ended or champs is about to happen.
Hmm.
What army do I want to bring next year?
Really?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So the army that I'm bringing next weekend to the
Yep.
club champs, I started working on the day after last year's champs.
Shit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Now,
And
I don't work on it steadily. I put some stuff together. I figure out what works, what doesn't work. Inevitably, there's units that come and go, and the list changes over the course of the year with point updates and
yeah.
rules and whatnot. But
Yeah.
the core idea of that army. So I'm
Mhm.
bringing Legion of the Damned this year. That's the army that I'm going to put on the table.
Very cool.
That's
And
really
and
cool.
I've wanted to put together Legion of the Damned for about 10 years now. It's an
Mhm.
army that I've loved. I remember when they had their own units in the actual game, I was going to build an army based around them,
Mhm.
and then they got removed, and I was pissed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, well, it just lets me have a whole army of Legion of the Damned now, and I don't have to worry about having specific units.
There you
So
go.
yeah,
There you go. That's awesome.
Hmm.
Wow. I like the fact that too that it's your display board isn't just like a centerpiece. It actually revolves around what units you like, you don't like, what ones you play, what ones that don't work. So I take it that, if a unit didn't work in a test game somewhere earlier in the year, you're like, well, you know what, that one's probably not going to make the final cut. Like, do you leave it unfinished or do you finish everything?
I leave it unfinished. Like I
Yeah,
there
okay,
are
cool.
there are units there are Legion of the Damned units in the storage box that they reside in now,
Right,
or that the unfinished pieces reside in that are converted already to be painted or even primed in some cases
right.
that are going to stay that way until it's one of those. I don't feel like working on the current army that I'm working on. I'll
Hmm.
grab a model that I've put together and haven't painted yet, and then just rip away, and kind of a cleansing of the palette for
Hmm.
when I'm working on an army. Sometimes you just need a change of pace. So
Yeah.
I love
Yep.
that. I love that you've got a Legion of the Damned that are quite literally a Legion of Damned, that you've just left them at the side. Like,
Yeah.
you were not
yeah,
good enough.
yeah, like they're in a drawer.
Yeah.
So it's the literal out of sight, out of mind. Like
Yeah,
Uh,
quite literally. That is amazing. So you really approach it from the art aspect of it, of turning
mhm.
everything into its own piece.
yeah,
Does that then make it, because a lot of people talk about, newly painted syndrome, all that kind of stuff. Does that make it like one of those things where you get it on the table, you've spent all this time on it, and then turn one, something happens to it, and you're like, God damn it, all of that time.
it's there have been times that's happened. Mostly when I brought my night armies out, because I have
Right.
two different armies of Chaos Knights, and invariably I'd put them on the table, and somebody would smoke one of the big knights like first turn. And in my
Yeah.
mind, I was like, "Mother."
Yeah. God damn it.
Yeah,
Do you
no,
have any
80
idea how
hours
that
of
long?
painting wasted.
it's fine.
Oh,
It's fine. It's fine.
fine.
It's
It's
fine.
fine.
It's
It's
fine.
gonna
This
be
is good.
okay.
This is good.
So, how many armies do you have? Because we're talking to a professional here who's probably got a few 2,000 point armies that are completely finished.
I do. So I have about 5,000 points worth of Thousand Suns.
Awesome.
Because again, they're kind of my primary army.
Mhm.
They don't look like your standard Thousand Suns.
Hmm.
When I was first putting them together, uh, so I was in the Air Force for a while, the U.S. Air Force.
Hmm.
So when I was in the Air Force, I didn't have a chance to play a lot because I got moved around a whole bunch, and
Sure.
Right.
so I'd pick up a model and paint it and put it together, but you can't really just move from place to place to place. So there was a kind of a break in the hobby for me around fifth edition, I
Hmm.
believe, where
Mhm.
I never actually touched fifth edition on the tabletop.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's fifth and first are the only editions that I haven't played of the game.
Wow.
Yeah, because I started in the second edition kind of Rogue Trader ending era, and it was
Hmm.
right on the cusp of going into third end is when I
Okay.
started like really getting into the game. And then I got out of the Air Force and moved to Canada,
Hmm.
and then I wasn't able to play the game for a long time because I was in an unfortunate relationship
Hmm.
where doing anything for myself was kind of frowned upon.
Right.
So like after everybody would go to bed, I would stay up until like 2 in the morning
Right.
just painting models because it went from a way that I enjoyed
Hmm.
Mhm.
interacting with the game and the hobby to being the only way that I could interact with the game and the hobby. So painting models and converting them and making them my own
Hmm.
became even more important because there
Right.
Right.
was that like Nexus, the club champs was really the only event like I could do one event a year.
Hmm.
So I kind of that's where the whole cycle of doing an army a year kind of came from.
Nice.
So when I first did up my Thousand Suns, I went a little bit crazy with them because I had just it was the only thing that I could do to indulge the hobby. I
Hmm.
wanted to completely remake my Thousand Suns, so I did them in they're all pre-heresy color schemes, so they're red with
Yeah.
the white and bone colored trim, and then
I
leaders have the gold
love
colored trim.
the heresy look of Thousand Suns. I think they look fantastic.
There's almost not a single actual Thousand Sun model in my Thousand Sun army. So the legs for all of my rubrics are they're all the Dark Angels company veteran like robed legs,
Right.
Okay.
and then the robed upper torsos. I took regular like rubric arms and the
Hmm.
bolters, so they're armed with all the proper stuff. Their heads are a mix of like either robed, robed heads or the
Mhm.
Right.
kind of standard Thousand Sun heads that you'd
Hmm.
see. I bought a bunch of the Heresy upgrade kits when they came out
Hmm.
with them that had all the Thousand Suns pre-Heresy stuff. So
Yeah.
they've got the pre-Heresy shoulder pads, and
That's
for a
amazing.
while I had to freehand on the the Thousand Sun logo because
Jesus.
There's
they
no
didn't have the shoulder
transfers.
pads at the time. Yeah, there were no transfers, so I
Yeah.
just had to freehand every single sun onto shoulders.
Oh my God.
Wow. My
Yeah,
God.
That is some serious dedication.
I thought
That
this
is
guy's going to be like, that is insane,
that is
drawing each
that is a
shoulder pad.
lot. That would
uh,
be like a test of
For
patience,
5,000
willpower, and
points.
interest. Like at some point, I would just be like, I don't care anymore.
it's
And that's why I'm
it,
in the Consolation League. Um,
it's worse than that. Uh,
It's worse than that.
so,
It's worse than that.
um, so in there were five cults of the Thousand Suns
Hmm.
pre-Harrison. Um, so I know that they all had the same color robes described in the heresy books. I
Mhm.
get that. This is the only kind of break from lore that I took with
Mhm.
my army. Each of the different cults in my army all have a different colored robe.
Right.
Oh wow.
So all of the Corvidae have bone colored robes. All of the Pyre have red.
Mhm.
Pavoni, yeah, all the different cults, they all have their own robe color.
Right.
Then in
That's
that
cool.
robe color, I hand painted embroidery onto the
Mm.
robes, like I free-handed on designs.
Holy
Good God.
shit.
And the styles are all the same for the different cults. So
Right.
the Corvidae, they all have um, black and gray kind of geometric designs on there, and there's
Mhm.
no two designs that repeat.
Oh my
Oh
God.
my God.
So every single robe is unique.
So
Now,
at what point, like you talked about the monopose guys that you first picked
mhm.
up and kind
Yeah,
of is that what set you off on the whole path of to hell with this? I don't want to do everybody looking the same. I want something because you're talking about conversions and kit bashing and all that kind of like serious time going into it. What was the catalyst that was like, I don't want this to look like everyone else's army. I want it to be completely unique. I want that soul put into it, of everything. Like, was it that conversation that set you off on that path? Or it doesn't
it,
sound like it because you were building that that thing, that model to begin with all of this kit bashing and kind of
Mhm.
art behind it. Like you were really talking about creating art at this point.
yeah. I so my mom, she's an art historian by PhD.
Mm.
Okay.
So I grew up in museums and
Mhm.
appreciating the uniqueness of an object.
The Thousand Suns is now making a little bit more sense, but continue.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
uh, yeah. I always I always kind of enjoyed tinkering and putting my own stuff together
Right.
Mhm.
and not having it look like what the box looked like.
Right.
I have to say my Necrons are probably the most stock looking army that I own, just
Now I
because.
think I saw some of them. You were playing them at the Secret Santa tournament,
Mhm.
and but they were their color scheme was unique, if I remember right, and you also had these like hexagon kind of bases,
Yes,
octagonal kind of bases. Like I was like, it looked awesome, and I just was like, it immediately struck me as something that should be on display when I
I
saw it.
have some really big shelves that I have all of my display boards with the armies kind of set
Oh,
out on
okay.
them. Yeah, but you're right. The majority of my Necrons are on printed hexagonal bases. So I designed them in AutoCAD so that they
Hmm.
would be flat to flat on the hexagon, the proper
Right.
size for the base that they're supposed to be on. So I'm not gaming the system by having a larger
Right.
than.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
but I needed them to be deeper because I put LEDs into all of my Necrons.
See, so you're
Yeah.
saying
It's
like they're the most stock ones that you've got, and then there's
and
3D
then well,
printing and there's
except for the
LEDs
bases and the
and
LEDs
the
and the
LEDs
paint scheme.
and the paint scheme.
I Yeah, so the Necrons, like the Necron warriors, I drilled through, like there's the recesses for where their rib cage sits.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
drilled through all of those, so they're actually hollowed out all the way back to the spine.
Wow.
And then on the spine, I glued on these little tiny blue LEDs that when I pop a pancake battery into the base, it shines out through
That's
the rib cage
awesome.
and up through the neck hole.
I mean, it's
So,
This
absolutely
is,
next level.
yeah, that is just phenomenal. So, did you were talking to us a little bit before, like you were working at, and I'm assuming this is the jumping back to the store.
Hmm.
mhm.
This was the store that you as a teenager turned into the GW rep.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
So,
Um, the I started working there. I was the only one that played 40K out of all the staff. I was in my I was in 10th grade when I
Hmm.
first started working there, and like the store owner John, he was like, I hate talking to Games Workshop. I just can't stand dealing with those people. They ask me things and I don't play this game. I don't really care about it. And he was like, Gorilla Matt, you play the game. You know, you're the Games Workshop rep now. And I was like,
Me?
Who, this guy?
Is there another Matt?
yeah. Hilariously, there had been a long history of Matts that had worked
Okay.
at the store. So we all had a little like extra, you know, piece added onto our name.
Hmm.
At the time I helped move around like the display cases and stuff, and I could lift heavy things. So I was
Hmm.
Gorilla Matt. That was my
Yeah.
my designation. And there was another Matt that worked there, and he played Magic, and he
Mhm.
was really small and kind of annoying. And John nicknamed him Squee,
Oh.
which was a Magic card, and it was like a goblin, but he was really annoying to get rid of in the game. So John was like, "You're Squee." Like that's what he called him.
Oh, that's great.
So did you talk to the rep about kind of what were those kind of conversations about? Like, was it what's happening? Would you kind of, I mean, you were only in 10th grade, you were in grade 10. Would you be like, "Hey, I did this really cool thing with one of your models."
It was
Or
really more business related at that
okay.
point. At the time, I'd call them up, and or they would call us on like Tuesday was our order day,
Mm.
and I'd walk back to the area and I'd be like, all right. And this is at the time where everything almost was in a blister. You had like the pewter blisters
Okay,
full of,
yes.
Right.
full of dudes. It'd be like, all right, give me like three of these. Like I need two blisters of those. I need two of these. Because at the time they came in these little brown paper boxes and they were
Right.
packaged back to back. So it was two blisters in one brown box. So you typically wanted to order twos of something because trying
Right.
to split a box, they really got they got they got a little lippy with you when you tried to split a box.
Gotcha.
They had a thing against odd numbers. Everything had to be even.
They hated odd numbers. They were like even only.
Yeah. And
It
how long
was
were you the GW rep for?
until I graduated high school and left for
Wow.
the Air Force. So I was a GW rep for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
And what was the meta like at that point in time? Like what was the shop, what were you trying to like buy? And would you be like, well, I really like this army, so I wouldn't mind having a few of those kicking around? Or was it like, no, you had to just supply what the audience, quote unquote, was like looking for?
there was a pretty good, there was a pretty solid group of folks that played 40K
Okay.
even
Hmm.
back then. There were two really staunch orc players, I remember. And
Hmm.
they were guys that clearly had really good jobs because they would come into the store and they'd drop, and this is back in like the late 90s,
Hmm.
slash early 2000s. They'd drop like $250 a week on
Right.
40K stuff.
Oh,
It's a
wow.
lot of
And
cheddar.
and yeah, and at the time I was like, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
Like you were walking away with a bunch of stuff at that
Mhm.
point. Now it's like Bellacore in a paint pot.
Yeah. Just Bellacore, really. It's just gotten to that point. And
Mhm.
back in those days, was there as much because this is what because Scott and I are late to Warhammer. Like we
Hmm.
only got into it at the mid
Mid
nines
nines,
kind of
yeah.
thing. And so we're used to this like FOMO hype era of Warhammer with like fancy army boxes being put out and this like rush to pre-order and you know
There
pre-orders
was
selling out before
yeah,
10 a.m. and like all
Mhm.
this kind of stuff.
none of that. This was
None
all
of
like
that.
this is in the infancy of the internet when
Right.
GW didn't even have a website at that point, I don't think.
Right.
Uh, Everything was done mail order or
Hmm.
through your local game store or through one of the GW stores
Right.
that you could find. It was interesting in each of the White Dwarves at the time, they had like a pull-out poster. And on the
Hmm.
back of the poster was typically like the list of every single Games Workshop store, like the
Oh,
official
okay.
stores, and then
Yeah.
they had a further list of the stores where you could find Games Workshop product.
Gotcha.
So it was just this massive list of stores, and it was like city, state, and then phone number, I believe,
Mm.
was on there.
I
It's
mean,
been a long time since I.
good for them. That's more than you get now.
Yeah, it was a totally different time,
Yeah.
but they did have army boxes. They weren't as prevalent,
Hmm.
and they were pretty rough at,
Hmm.
looking at that time. It was basically like your standard white, like cardboard box that
Mm.
has it's the little clamshell one. It was just the
Sure.
printed kind of big, sort of glossy, this is what's in the box kind of thing. And then the whole part was shrink wrapped. It was
Right.
basically, it was just um, like kits that they had
Hmm.
taken in and blisters and stuff that they jammed into one big box, and then they're like, here you go. It's like a deal. It
Right.
was not a deal.
It was not
Yeah.
ideal.
Yeah, there were no discounts. It was
Yeah.
just buy everything in this box instead of buying all the things in the box separate.
Mm.
Yeah, so I guess because now they kind of do deals, right? Like army
Yeah, they're
boxes tend to be like, somewhere between 20 and 30% discount, sometimes a little
yeah.
bit better.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So you've got your Legion of the Damned all ready to go for Family Day weekend, the weekend of the 15th, right? Is I think the
Correct. Yeah.
league champs.
Mhm.
Do you already know what you're doing for the following year?
Yes.
All right, let's hear it.
I've actually already started building them.
Okay, go on.
Yeah. It's Aeldari.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very
I
cool.
it was kind of a kick in the teeth, because
Hmm.
I've had 20 of the Shadow Specters, the Forge
Okay.
World Shadow Specters.
Hmm.
They're
Okay.
kind of the ghostly looking people with the jetpacks and the robes and like the
Right.
kind of cool prism rifle things.
Hmm.
I've had 20 of them, and their aspect, like the Phoenix Lord,
Okay. Yep.
for probably 2.5 years now.
Hmm.
Then I was like, you know what? One day I wouldn't mind putting together an Eldari force. That might be fun.
Hmm.
Put it together, see if I like it, play it, you know, do something cool with
Hmm.
Yeah.
it. And then in this, finally I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to do Eldari next year.
Yeah.
And this was back in like October.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, let's start gathering some stuff. Let's start, working up an idea in my head. And
Hmm.
uh and then they announced the Aeldari Codex,
Yep.
and Shadow Specters are legends now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Son of
I
a
was giving me my next question is like, what does a hobbyist like you do when you're like, ooh, I love the look of those. I know exactly what I'm gonna do with them. And then bam, legend. Like, so it doesn't follow your uh methodology anymore because you don't, I take it you don't include units in the list that aren't rules legal, right?
so I
Or,
can't for champs. I can
Yep.
still
yeah,
use them in like
yeah,
beer and
friendly
pretzels,
games
Saturday
and
games, yeah,
yeah,
whatever.
absolutely.
They will have to be a counts as unit in my army.
Right.
So
Okay.
I'm going to count them as warp spiders.
Right.
So
Okay.
Nice.
so
Nice.
I have 15 of them put together. Um,
Very cool.
yeah, but the thing that the kind of overall aesthetic that I'm going to do with them is kind of a Japanese Zen garden sort of piece.
Oh my God,
Oh,
it's gonna be
wow.
fantastic.
So I'm thinking like cream colored armor,
Yep.
um, and then Den of Imagination. Have you guys heard of
Oh
you've
yeah,
heard of,
I
yeah?
watch Winners all the time, and he's sponsored by Den of Imagination. They're awesome.
So they have this really cool stamping tool that they made.
Hmm.
Has a little handle, and then there's tips that go into it, and the tip is a reverse bas relief of a skull, and they have different sizes. So what
Okay.
you do
Okay.
is you put some water inside there, and then you mash a little blob of green stuff in, and then you mash that onto your model, and there you have a green stuff skull on your model.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really cool. I have one. I've printed one out because they sell the files. So
Mhm.
Right.
I've tried it a few times. It's pretty cool. It works well. It's a
Nice.
cool idea. So I'm taking their idea and I'm 3D modeling a lotus blossom,
hmm
and that, or the, I guess it's a cherry blossom, not a
Mhm.
lotus. So the cherry blossom I'm going to do in different sizes,
hmm
and then I'm going to stamp them onto the armor for the for the whole army.
Holy
So
shit.
then
Holy
it'll,
shit.
like, the lotus blossoms will be this kind of cool bas relief,
Right.
kind of texturing on the really smooth surfaces
Yeah.
of all the the vehicles and jet bikes and stuff.
That is
So are you
amazing. That is
you're
absolutely amazing. Well done,
yeah.
you. Like that is.
So you'll do that with like you'll say you get a box of Guardians, for example, and you'll assemble those and then do that on each model.
Yeah.
Holy
So
shit.
the ones that I have three, because I start off with stuff that I like the look of. So
Sure.
I have shroud runners because
Yep.
I think having people in robes are cool.
Yep.
Call me biased, but
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
people
Yeah.
in robes are cool.
Yeah.
So I have three shroud runners, and I'm trying to get hooded heads for everybody because they only have hooded heads for the people that are driving.
That's
The
right.
actual
Yep.
the actual rangers on the back don't have hoods.
hmm
So I'm trying to find a bunch of really interesting and cool kind of kitbashy head bits and pieces to
Right.
put onto them. But yeah, I'm looking forward to having like the cherry blossoms on there, and then I'll be freehanding the tree beneath them. So the
Mhm.
tree is going to be in 2 dimensions, but the blossoms are going to be in three.
Good
Oh, that's
God.
awesome.
So when you're coming up with these concepts, and this might be a stupid question, but is it the concept and then the army that'll fit it, or is it an army and then what concept do I want to go with? Like the
It's
chicken
the
or the
army
egg?
and then the concept. So
Okay.
I look at it and then I'm like, okay, so it's Eldari. I've seen Eldari armies before. I've seen some really cool Eldari armies before.
Hmm.
hmm
How do I make it my own that I've never seen before,
Right.
but have something that I really enjoy? And I've always thought that Japanese block prints were super cool. I
Hmm.
have a I have a couple that my mom gave me above my desk, and
hmm
uh, and there's one, and it's a cherry blossom tree, and it's
Nice.
in front of a sunset, and there's um, there's a phrase next to it. I don't read Japanese, so I can't tell you what it is,
Mm.
but it's cool, and I've always liked the idea, and it just kind of it worked out that so cherry blossoms are really beautiful, but they're
hmm
beautiful for like 2 days, and
Hmm.
then they all fall off the tree, and it's just this barren, dead tree until it blossoms again. It doesn't really have leaves, and I thought that kind of fit with the Aeldari
Hmm.
because like they're in the twilight of
Yep.
of their race's life in the
hmm
40K lore, and they're very natural based. They try to balance things out as much as they can nowadays.
hmm
Um, Slanesh had other things to say about that way back,
hmm
but yeah, so it's the I've been working on the avatar recently, and
I love that
the
model.
so the shadow specters came with these really weird kind of like they look like a bathrobe belt
hmm
Okay.
if you took that bathrobe belt off and just kind of twisted it and had it wound up in different ways.
hmm
And you're supposed to take these things and glue them onto the shadow specters in different ways as like the little ghostly tendril things coming off of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I didn't do that because they're not shadow specters, they're going to be warp spiders. So
Right.
Hmm.
the robes that are attached to them are kind of enough. I'm trying to keep them a little sleeker looking. But I had like 80 of these things left over because there's just so many that you're supposed to glue on. And I was like, well, what the hell do I do with all of these?
hmm
And then I thought about because I have the cherry blossom piece, I thought about the Japanese prayer trees, where they take these, they'll write down something that that they're looking forward towards happening, or something they hope will not happen, and
Okay.
then they roll it up and they tie it into a knot around a tree. And
Right.
then you have these trees that are just coated in these prayer strips. So the avatar, because he's a statue before he comes to life,
Hmm.
I I glued on a bunch of these, like the ribbons. So I sculpted on more robes to the avatar. So he's got kind of a almost, it's kind of like a dueling cape that comes up from his one arm that has the blood coming off of it.
Hmm.
Mhm.
I've repositioned that, and I'm going to have kind of a, like a, an icon or something hanging from a chain from his hand. So
Hmm.
instead of having it turned this way, it's turned backwards.
Hmm.
Um, and then he has all of these prayer papers that are coming off of him that are blowing in the same direction that the wind is going.
Right.
So he'll have, um, like on the board itself, the board is going to be like a frost world, so it's all
Hmm.
icy and dead, and
Okay.
he's going to be just coming to life. So I've
Right.
clipped off almost all of the flames. I'm going to have to cut a bunch of the flames and reposition them and
Hmm.
sculpt around to make it look right, so that the flames are blowing in the right way that the wind is blowing.
Right.
But then the majority of it is going to be these fluttering prayer papers, and then just frost and snow and ice all over them, with
Wow.
like a dark sort of blood red line in the
Hmm.
really deep recesses in there, and then one explosion of flame where he's kind of coming to life and
Right.
breaking the ice and snow.
Oh my
Holy
God.
shit, that'll be
Can't wait to
phenomenal.
see it.
Yeah.
I can't wait to
Have
see it either.
Yeah.
I have this vision in my
Yeah,
head,
yeah.
and it's always the, it's that, the kind of excitement and fear and anxiety
Right.
about whether or not I can make the piece on the table
Mm.
look as spectacular as I can see it in my head.
Right, of course. Have you
So
ever submitted your stuff to White Dwarf? I know they always do like, they have in the first few pages, it's always like submitted
Hmm.
artwork or artwork people's like designs. You ever tried to send anything into them or anything like that?
no, I haven't tried that. It's really just, I do it because I enjoy it.
Right.
It's really just more for me, and
Hmm.
the like the little Easter eggs that I put into stuff is, I do it because I know it's there, not
Right.
because I expect anybody else to ever catch it.
Right.
Like the,
Okay.
so you asked a bit ago about what armies I have. So I've
Hmm.
got about 5,000 points of Thousand Suns. Got
Hmm.
about 2,800, maybe 3,000 points of Necrons.
Hmm.
Um, I have two different knight armies, both Chaos Knights, and they're different styles. So one of
Hmm.
them is Legio's Astobiacs, just like the purple and the white. And they
Okay.
were, I did that because they started from a pair of armigers that were
Hmm.
allied with my Thousand Sons, and
Right.
Legio's Astobiacs were the only kind of Titan Legion. And I stretched the lore to say that there was a knight household on the
Hmm.
Zastobiacs world. So it made sense that they worked with the Thousand Sons, because that was the only uh, Titan Legion that ever worked with the Thousand Sons.
Right.
Okay.
Um, and then my other knight army is just four big knights. And
Hmm.
I don't know if you've ever played the game Darksiders before or not, or seen it.
Sounds
Oh,
familiar.
it was on
Yes.
Xbox. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there's four of them now.
yeah.
Anyways,
Hmm.
Right.
it's kind of an interesting sort of retelling on Catholic mythology, where instead of the four horsemen of the apocalypse being angels, they
Hmm.
were the Nephilim themselves were a different race,
Okay.
and then they gave four of the Nephilim these crazy powers, and they became, war, death, strife, and fury. They replaced famine and pestilence,
Okay.
just for video game purposes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I really heavily converted four big knights to be the four horsemen from Darksiders. So
Oh shit.
Nice.
that's my other knight army. And then I've got a built but not painted guard army,
Okay.
which is really again heavily converted. They're all walking. They have legs for the tanks. They don't have treads.
Oh, that's so
Oh my
cool.
God.
So there's like basilisks, and they have the big carriage, and then there's like the four like
Hmm.
kind of crab legs that it walks on. I
Very
make sure
cool.
that I made sure the size was accurate to the
Sure.
length width, and height
Hmm.
of everything, so I'm not gaming the system. But
Hmm.
Good God.
and then I've got about because I have a warhound with it. I've got about 3,000 points of Death Guard
Nice.
and now 2,000 points of Legion of the Damned, and I have the Kroot box because I thought Kroot would be kind of cool. And then I'm working on 2,000 points of Aeldari. So
Nice.
Oh my
yeah,
God.
Wow. So the new guard releases didn't entice you enough to skip Eldari for this season, eh?
no, not at all.
Yeah.
I
Not
mean,
at all.
Krieg is
Like,
cool. Don't get me
yeah,
wrong, Krieg is
yeah.
cool, but like if I'm playing guard, I don't really
Hmm.
care about the troops. In
Right.
the guard army that I have, there's 20 infantry.
Ah.
It's two squads of 10, and
Hmm.
they're there for actions and
Yeah.
holding objectives and other stuff.
Hmm.
Literally every other thing is a tank.
Nice.
It's artillery pieces or Lehman Russes. It's probably not competitive. It'll probably get beaten to death horribly because
Right.
it's just tanks. They need to be shooting and doing things. They don't need to be doing actions.
Yep.
Hmm.
I didn't build it because it was going to be a competitive option. I built it
Yeah.
because I was like,
That's
Yeah.
amazing. So,
Uh,
like, what's striking me about all of this is what do you do in your spare time? Because this feels like a full-time thing to be doing all these like kit bashing and conversions and stuff. Like
mhm.
this is clearly from everything you're talking about, this is clearly like a not to get all, whatever, but this is a labor of love that goes into all of these things. Like this is your like therapy Zen moments. This is just what you do to like totally chill out type of
that's
thing.
exactly it. It's and like I said, for the longest time, modeling and making miniatures and painting them was the only way that I could interact with the hobby. So
Mhm.
it was as important to make something that I was proud of as it was to kind of live in the moment and enjoy just the like you said, the meditative Zen moment of
Hmm.
just being able to create and just be truly and utterly free in doing anything that I wanted to with that model.
Mhm.
So it very much became like almost a therapy at
Hmm.
times where I could set everything else aside and just you know put my hands on some models and work away. Hell, I don't actually have thumbprints anymore.
Super glue.
Just yeah, like razor cuts and over the years. I remember when I was getting my citizenship, they had a really tough time fingerprinting my thumbs.
Right.
And I was like, so what? She was like, oh, this isn't working. The lady that was doing my prints, and I was like, so what happens what happens to my citizenship if you can't print my thumbs?
Mhm.
She's like, well, then you can't become a citizen. I was in my mind, I was like, oh, I hope this works. It worked. Finally, they got enough of a print that they were like,
Yeah,
yeah, all right, it's good enough.
It's good
fine.
enough.
But I can look at the top of my thumb and it's just a weird crisscross of it's like an armored shell now.
Right. So let me ask you this, Matt. Are you a batch painter or do you do them like one at a time?
It depends on the army. It really
Okay.
depends on the army. So Necrons, I batch painted the hell out of those guys
Hmm.
because it's so the it's black primer,
Mhm.
uh, two different dry brushes, and then a patina wash. So I'd
Mhm.
get like 10 warriors together and just rip through all the dry brushing because by the time I got to the 10th dude,
Hmm.
Mhm.
and painters out there are probably going to be like, putting hits out on me for this. I didn't even wash my dry brush in between colors.
Mhm.
So I went straight from the one metallic to the next
Yep.
metallic and cranked out and just kept going.
Yeah, why not?
Washed it at
It's
the very end. Yeah. But I know there are people that they have like five different dry brushes laid out for the
Right.
different colors and whatnot. Um, yeah, so then I get it to the patina stage, and then that would be what I got done.
Right.
So Necron's painted super fast,
Yeah.
but then I had to take the two wires because stupidly I wired every single one of them.
Mhm.
So I had to drill a hole in the base and
Mhm.
then uh, feed the wires through the base, glue the dude to the base, cut the wires, strip the wires back, and I had like my soldering iron plugged in and
Oh
and
my
heating
God.
up at this point. So then I do 10 warriors at a time or 10 models at a time
Mhm.
because then I had to wrap the wires around the battery posts, solder them, glue the battery box in, test it to make sure that everything worked properly, and then set
Right.
that one aside so I could finish the basing later.
Oh my
And
God.
it was a 10-minute process. I had it down to 10 minutes per to
holy crap.
solder and put one model onto a base.
Wild. Wild.
So
So
if you,
how long does it
sorry.
take you to do a unit of 10, or like so I guess it varies from project to project, kind of
Yeah.
already.
Thousand Suns, it to get them to the point where the embroidery is going to take over,
Mhm.
it's about I can get a squad of 5 rubrics done in about 6 hours,
Right.
like 6 hours total between all the
Mhm.
different stages.
Sure.
Because some of them, and it's like paint the same, I don't paint in the same step for every army. So like Necrons, it was 2 layers of dry brushing and then a patina wash, and
Mhm.
then picked out additional pieces after that with different brighter colors and OSL.
Mhm.
But Necrons were necrotic flesh primer,
Mhm.
picked out all of the painted details with the brightest version of the color, inked it twice with two different inks, and then went back and edge highlighted all of those same colors back up to get some pop back into the model.
Wow.
Thousand Suns were primed and then inked and then cell shaded and then other layers and then other layers and other layers. Uh, and
That's
then
amazing.
Legion of the Damned was they were black primed and then sponge chipped,
Mhm.
and then all of the brushwork was picked out because I had to do all of the bone and bone highlights going up to
Mhm.
white and brass and metallics and lenses and all of that before I got to painting the flames because
Right.
the flames they cast OSL over everything.
Hmm.
So
Right.
yeah, so I had to essentially finish the model and then go back and paint all the flames. So I'd get 5 guys done and then go back and do the one color on all 5, and
Mhm.
then again not clean out my brush and just go upwards because it's your hottest color,
Hmm.
your brightest one is in the middle, and then you build outwards. And
Mhm.
I found that it was weird. I had to paint them twice. So
Mhm.
first going outwards, you paint the flames, and then once you get to your coldest color on your flames, that's the widest spread net for the OSL from the fire.
Right.
So
Right.
then you do that on all of your surfaces, and then you go back to your next lightest color, and you do that for all of your surfaces, and next lightest, then next lightest as you go back towards the flames on the model.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh my
the
God. So how did you
first
learn
couple
to
that
do
I
all
did.
this?
I looked at so for the flames, I never really OSL'd flames
Mhm.
before Legion of the Damned. So I looked up a couple like how to paint flames
Right. Gotcha.
kind of videos and tutorials, and it was like, yes, I like that. No, I don't like that because I do everything with a brush. I don't airbrush anything.
Hmm.
So it's, you know, I know that they'd be really good for this. I see guys doing airbrush
Hmm.
flames stuff all the
Yeah.
time, and it looks just absolutely incredible. I'm
Hmm.
not going to besmirch people who use
Hmm.
airbrushes, but I, I'm old fashioned. I prefer
Hmm.
doing it with a brush.
Right.
So if you had one tip to give to new painters, people just entering the hobby, like just getting started with all of this stuff, what would your tip be? Like what would be the one golden nugget that you'd want to pass on to people?
Know It'd be know what you want to do before you do it.
Mm.
There's nothing that can be gained by rushing into putting paint or putting anything together on model.
Mm.
Like get the book, understand, like go into it with an idea. Go into it
Hmm.
with a good like a theme in mind. Like what you wanted, the end goal of what you want it to look like. Because then when you have that end goal, getting to that, like then you're what everything is supposed to look like. And then you just work through it from there.
Mm.
Sound
Because
advice.
it's
That
kind of
advice.
weird that you start with the end, but by starting with the end, you then know exactly where you have to start to get there.
Mhm. So that's where I'm going wrong.
That's the one thing.
That's,
That's just the one
that's
thing.
just the one area.
Oh man. Well, thanks a lot, Matt, for joining us and chatting with us tonight about the hobby. It's great to get that fresh perspective and like
Hmm.
from someone who's done some really fantastic work. I mean, you really should. Do you you don't? Do you have an Instagram or anything dedicated to your hobbying or anything like that? Well,
No,
you
I
should
don't.
start because I've seen
Yeah.
it in person and it's fantastic. So it would be great to share those ideas and
Hmm.
that inspiration with others for sure, and maybe even start your own YouTube channel and do some how-to videos now that you're a flame painting master.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would say master. It's well like 10,000 hours you have to paint
Yeah.
flames to you have to do something to be considered an expert.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
I
This is
definitely
Oh
don't want to
man.
paint flames for 10,000 hours.
no, just the embroidery and the, and the suns.
Great,
That's where it
great
stands.
title though for a video. How to paint flames in 10,000 hours. That
Yes.
would be
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
That'd be amazing. Well, thank again, yes, thank you very much for coming on. Thanks for
Thanks, Matt.
sharing your story with us. This has been absolutely fantastic. It's both inspirational and disappointing that I won't be at that level because I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, ooh, what speed paints can I use to get this thing out the door as
We were
fast as I can?
Oh yeah.
talking about his mandrakes for this weekend, and he's like, "Yeah, what speed
Guilty.
paints will I use to get there?"
Yeah. So,
Speaking of
Man.
mandrakes, I'm in the market for some heads.
Oh, there you go.
I'll see
There
if I've
you
still
go.
got them around. Yeah, I'll see if there's any
Yeah.
around.
Cool.
All right.
All
Thanks for
right.
having me. I enjoyed
Thank
it.
you.
Thank
Awesome.
you.